Okay, so the problem with factoring a lot in grade 10 is often teachers teach you all these different methods depending on what the equation is. And it becomes very, very, very confusing. Okay, so which way do we use which equation? Okay, I'm going to show you one method that works for all of them. Okay, whether it's a difference of squares, whether it's a perfect trinomial, whether it's a simple trinomial, a complex trinomial, 4 terms, whatever it is, I'm going to show you one method and it's going to work for all of them. Okay? Do you guys remember some of the names that you learned for the factoring methods last year? No? Did you guys do decomposition? No? Okay. Did you do like a PSI, product sum integer? Is that what you guys did? Okay. Product sum integer is one. Okay, so I'm going to show you a cross method. Learn a cross method. It's kind of like a trial and error, but it works all the time. Okay, so we're going to learn, guys, it's kind of a trial and error. When I was in grade 10, the teacher called it cross voodoo. And I'll never forget it because it's such a weird name, but it's just a cross method. And it's going to work for all of them, whether it's a simple trinomial or a complex trinomial. Okay, so you guys have a sheet here. You can use it if you want to, but again, it shows you different methods. But what I want you to identify are kind of the steps. Okay, so the very, very first step always in factoring, always, is to see if there's a common factor. Because if you can see a common factor and remove it, it always makes the equation much easier to handle, okay, especially with factoring. So you always want to, and it's very, very common, that people forget about the common factor and they'll factor and they're still left, it's not fully factored. So you want to remove a common factor if you can. Okay, so the first one, any common factor. X squared minus 7x plus 10. Any common factor there? Andrew? No. Okay, so this last term does not have an x, and then this one does not have a number higher than 1, so there isn't any common factor. Okay, so you learned last year, two numbers that add up to 10, multiply to 10 and add up to -7. Okay, but I'm going to show you my method. My method is going to be longer for these first three, but it's going to be extremely much shorter for these next two, which usually if you did decomposition, it's a whole like six steps process. My steps are all the same, okay? And this is how it works. We're going to break down the first term, and we're going to break down the third term. Okay? X squared, what can we break it down into? Like, what would be factored into?
X times X.
X and X. So, we're going to write this as X and X. Okay? So, we're breaking it down. We're breaking it into multiples. Okay? Now, we're going to break down the second term. Okay? Give me two numbers that will go into 10 if we break it down. Okay, what are your options?
5 and 2.
5 and 2, and what's the last option? But it's usually never the case. 5 and 2 and 10 and 1. Okay, chances are it's going to be 5 and 2. Okay, so this is how it works. We do a cross multiplication here. So we're going to do x times 2 and then x times 5. And what this actually represents is when you expand, when you expand, this is what happens. Okay, so we're gonna cross multiply it. So you do x times 5 is 5x, and x times 2 is 2x. So you break them down, you're gonna cross multiply it, and the last step is to add them together. So you add your answers together. So we have 5x and 2x equals 7x. Okay. The reason why I'm showing you this method, because later in the chapter, when we get later into chapter 2, you're going to have equations that have like 8 different equations to factor. If you do some long way that your teacher made or showed you last year, it's going to take you like 10 minutes a question. So it'll be like, if you have a question like 2 A, B, C, D, E, it's going to take you 10 minutes for each one, and it's going to be very, very long. This one is extremely fast. If it's brand new to you, once you get the hang of it, and you can factor very, very quickly. Okay, so we cross multiply here, And what happens is, if this number, once we add these together, if this number, or this term, matches the middle one, then we factored it. And I'll show you what the brackets are, okay? Right now, does this match? It does, but not fully. Okay, what's missing?
Negative.
Negative, okay? So what we do now, we have to get to -7. That means these have to be negative. So negative, negative, negative. So x times -2 is -2x. X times -5 is -5x. When you add them together, you get -7x. So, our answer is this. X minus 5, x minus 2. Okay, your brackets have to go horizontally. I know it won't matter for this one. Okay, so we get our two answers. And right now I know this is going to be, really it's just two numbers that add up to, or multiply to 10 and add to -7. But that changes when you get here. Okay, if you learned like 4 different methods last year. Okay, so we're just going to practice this method. Eventually you can just do it with just on the side and you'll be very quick at it. Okay, next one. Let's break down. So again, it's an x squared. Well, first, missed the first step. Common factor? Yes or no? No, no common factor, right? This one does not have an x. And this has a not 1, so we can't break anything down. So we take the first term, we're going to break it down into x and x. It's pretty much always x and x. Okay, except for when we get to these ones. Okay, now we're going to break down -10. Okay, two numbers that multiply to -10. Or two numbers that multiply to 10, we just did one, was 5 and 2. Okay, but one of them has to be negative. Because it's a -10. Okay, so which one's going to be negative? You guys just looking at it? Isabella? Sorry?
5.
The 5. Okay? Because once we add them together, we have to get to a -3. So we cross multiply here. You get -5x and 2x. When you add them together, you get -3x. And this does match the middle term. So that means we did it correctly. If by chance you accidentally put the negative on 2, you would have noticed you got a +3, and then you just switch it. So that's probably right in the middle of the glare for you guys. So I'm just going to move this closer for you guys so you see it out of the glare. That doesn't really help either. For those at home, if there's anytime that there's any issue seeing the board, you gotta let me know right away. Okay, so you put your brackets horizontally. So we have x minus 5 and x plus 2. Okay, next question. Again, first step. By the way, when you're going down this chart, you go in common factor, how many terms are there? So right now we're dealing with just 3 terms. So 3 terms breaks into simple trinomials and complex trinomials. Okay, so we go down here for 3, So we're dealing with these right now. And then tomorrow we'll do 2 and 4. Okay, so first step always in that sheet is common factor. Okay, do we have a common factor here? Common factor?
No.
I think we do have one. What can we remove? What's a common factor in all terms? Spell it? The 3. So we can take out a 3 from each of them. Okay? By the way, when we're factoring, we are dividing, right? We're dividing. We're doing the opposite of expanding. So our last lesson was expand. Right? Now we're just going backwards. So we're going from this back into brackets. Okay, so we're going to factor out a 3. Okay, so what that means is we're going to divide each of them by 3. So 3x squared divided by 3 would be 1x squared, or just x squared. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. So now we're left with the trinomial. Again, so we're going to break this down. So the x squared into x and x. Okay, what do we break the 3 down into? 3 breaks down into one option. 1 and 3, good. So 1 and 3. So again, we cross multiply. So we get x, 1x, and 3x, which gives you 4x. Okay, matches the middle term. So then we write our brackets. Okay, one thing here, don't forget your original 3. So we factor, we bring our 3 down. When it comes test time, I expect this method here. It's going to help you a lot. Did I tell you guys yesterday, chapter 2 and 3 together? Chapter 2, 3 test together, right? I told you guys. Because there's only 3 sections in chapter 3 I'm going to be doing. And it has to do with factoring. Because chapter 3 is all quadratics again. You guys did all quadratics in grade 10. There's no point in doing it all over again. And you're not going to be doing it next year in grade 12. So I'll just deal with the factoring part of the quadratics and finding nice intercepts. All right, 2 more. Okay, we're just doing the next 2 trinomials, and then we'll leave 2 terms and 4 terms for tomorrow. Just want to make a video. All right, so D. Whoa, that's 2 different letters. Can you guys correct this? This should be an M. That wouldn't make sense with two different letters. For those at home, it's 3m squared plus 8m plus 4. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. So there isn't any common factor here. So there's no number besides 1 that can go into 3, 8, and 4. Okay? This last one does not have an M, doesn't have an M, so then we can remove a letter as well. Okay, so what we're gonna do is break down the first term again, break down the third term. Okay? Last year, you probably, only certain teachers teach it this way. If you have Miss Fitzpatrick, she does it this way. Okay? Other teachers do decomposition. It ends up being 5, 6 steps. Okay? So again, we're gonna break down the first term. Okay? So we're gonna break down 3m squared. How could we break that down? 3m squared. Well, let's break down the m squared first. So m squared breaks down into m and m. My initials. So m and m. Okay, and then we also breaking down the 3, which is? Sorry? Was that it?
Yeah.
1 and 3, right? We just did 1 and 3. Or 3 and 1. Okay, now let's break down the 4. We have 2 options. What's the most common one, you think? 2 and 2. So break down the 4 into 2 and 2. Now we cross multiply and add the answers together to see if we get to 8m. So we have 1m times 2 is 2m. 3m times 2 is 6m. If you add them together, you get 8m, which is our middle term. So we did it correctly. Now we write, brackets go horizontally though. Make sure your bracket goes this way. 3m plus 2, and then 1m plus 2, or just m plus 2.